everybody. So today is Monday. Normally I have family movie night on Monday, but with Sundance, I just did not have time to watch anything, let alone review anything. But I wanted to give you guys a little recap and talk about my experience at Sundance. I was able to attend 9 out of 10 days. I missed one day because my sister is in town from London, and so I wanted to spend a day with her. But I ended up seeing 25 movies, which is pretty, I think, amazing for 9 days. And there were some highs, there were some lows, as there always is in Sundance, and there were some just in between solid flicks. So I'd say overall it was a pretty strong year. I don't know if I had quite the excitement of last year, and I don't know, maybe it's just because now I've been 4 years, and so it's just maybe a little more routine than it was last year. But yeah, there's still some really, really good films. I'm excited to talk to you about them. I was going to do daily recaps on this channel, but I ended up doing daily recaps on my blog instead. So you want to make sure you're following me on my blog and that you are looking at those reviews, because sometimes it's just easier to write than it is to do a video. But so that's the way it kind of ended up. And yeah, so it's an interesting thing. I ended up getting the locals pass for Sundance. A lot of people kind of want to know the mechanics of it all. And the way that you get the locals pass is the locals pass is $500, so it is pretty expensive. And you have to be on a line on the day that they're for sale. This year it was on the 16th of October. And you purchase your pass. And the great thing about the pass is that you can it's not even just that you can go to as many movies as you want, is that you are in a special pass holders line. So you get into any movie that you want to go to. That's so much better than getting tickets, because if you have tickets, you're just in the ticket holder line. And if they run out of spots, you may not get in, even though you have a ticket. That's never going to happen to you with a pass hold. So it's, even if you don't end up getting your money's worth out of the pass, it's still worth it for just convenience and less of a hassle. I had the SLC locals pass, so that means that I can only see movies in Salt Lake City. So I don't really have experience with the whole Park City side of things, the whole Park City scene, because I never go up there. It's just kind of a pain to go up Park City. And there's 5 venues in Salt Lake, and almost everything comes to Salt Lake. And sometimes people are like, well, why didn't you see this movie? Why didn't you see this movie? Well, it's always tricky because there's multiple movies playing at multiple venues. So you have to pick which one you're most interested in. But also some of the venues are 15, 20 minutes apart. And if your movie doesn't end until a certain time, it may be hard to get over to the other venue. A lot of times it's easier to pick 3 movies that look pretty good at the same venue. I ended up seeing 8 movies at the Grand Theater, and the Grand Theater is at the community college, and it's really nice because it has tons of parking, so you don't have to pay for parking, and pretty much everybody can get into the Grand. It only is showing movies on the weekends at Sundance there, but I still managed to see obviously a lot of movies there, and they get really good stuff at the Grand. The only downside to the Grand is the food is awful. They have this food stand and everything tastes so gross. I got cheese pizza and it tasted so chemically and weird. And then I got this hummus wrap, because how can you mess up hummus wrap? It's just like vegetables and a little bit of hummus, probably from a box or whatever. And it was terrible. It was so gross. And so yeah, if you get to the Grand, don't eat the food at the Grand. It was really bad. And then I saw 7 at the library. The library is pretty good place to see a movie. The seats are kind of uncomfortable is the only downside. You have your knees right up against the next row, and so there's really no room to kind of move around at all or feel comfortable. The seats are kind of small. So that's the downside to the Grand. I think I saw 5 at the Rose Wagner Theater, which is pretty nice theater. you have a pretty good view from wherever you're at. And the parking is expensive at both the library and at the end of the Rose Wagner. The parking's expensive. I saw 2 at the Broadway. The Broadway seats are really comfortable. They're very modern seats. I like those, and it's got good food there at the Broadway. The downside to the Broadway is that during the Sundance Festival, the parking structure is closed for most of the time, and so you have to find another parking spot. But the problem is that the parking meters are only for 2 hours. And so if your movie's longer than 2 hours, then you could get fined. So the parking situation at the Broadway is a pain. So that's the downside to the Broadway. And then the last venue is at the Tower Theater. And the Tower Theater is this historic theater. It's the oldest theater in Utah. It's really pretty, and it's very nostalgic to go in there. The seats are very uncomfortable though, and small. And it is so hard to find parking. You drive around because there's no parking lot of any kind at the tower, and there's just there's all street parking, and so you have to try to find a spot on the street. And a lot of times you're walking kind of in the dark in this neighborhood. It's my least favorite. Even during the regular year, the tower is a pain in the neck for parking, but they do have good popcorn there at the Tower Theater, and if you go there regularly, they actually have a whole archival DVD and Blu-ray rental thing, which is kind of fun. And so it's a really cool theater, but it's just kind of a pain for parking. And I saw 2 movies at the Tower Theater, so that's kind of how it worked out. 2 movies at Broadway, 5 movies at Rose Wagner, and 7 at the library, and 8 at Grand. So there you go. That's the movies, and then kind of where I saw them. And so let's get in and talk about the actual movies. And sometimes you'll also have a Q&A when you watch the movies. There'll be producers, directors, sometimes stars there at the festival. And so that's what part of it makes it a really cool experience. And you don't get as many in Salt Lake as you do in Park City. So maybe that's a downside to having the Salt Lake City pass. But oh well. But it's kind of fun when you do get a Q&A. Okay. So like I said, I saw 25 movies, and let's dive in and talk about them. Okay. My 25th movie, my least favorite of the whole festival, is called The Sunlit Night. This is based on a book, and evidently the writer of the book adapted it. It's directed by David Wendt, and it's about Jenny Slate plays this girl who is a co-lead protagonist in the movie. Then Alex Sharp plays the other co-protagonist, and she is this artist, and she gets a job working in Norway for this really curmudgeonly old painter who's painting this barn. And so she goes to Norway, and it all could be fine. The Alex Sharp character, he goes to Norway to bury his father, who wanted to be buried at the top of the world. And the problem is that it just was a complete mess. As far as I know, people say that about a lot of movies, but it was not ready to be screened at all. It had major ADR issues. The words weren't matching up with what the characters' mouths were saying. It was terribly edited. It was weird because Alex Sharp looked so young, and the screenplay kept treating him like a child. And here you have Jenny Slate, who's clearly like a woman. So it was very strange, their relationship, and they didn't have any chemistry at all. And they spent so little time together, so that when they get together, it felt weird. And the comedy feels so out of place. There's Zach Galifianakis is playing this American who lives at the Viking reenactment thing, and it was his part was very bizarre and it didn't fit the tone of the rest of the movie. I hate her parents were supposed to be like, I guess, kind of funny, but they were the worst and so irritating. All the characters were irritating, and it was just miserable. I hated it. It's the kind of movie that you dread in Sundance, and even Jenny Slate couldn't save it. It was terrible. And so there you go. That's number 25. I'm hoping they'll at least fix that ADR problem after the festival before they release it wide, because it was just a mess. Okay, and then the number 24 on my list is After the Wedding. This movie is well made. It looks really nice, and it does have a good cast, but with Michelle Williams and Julianne Moore. And Julianne Moore plays this woman who is this socialite, and she brings over Michelle Williams from India. She's running this orphanage, and she's wanting to sponsor the orphanage, and she has sort of other motives. And this is a remake of a Danish movie, I guess, but then they gender swapped it. I guess the original has Mad Mikkelsen in it. But anyway, I just found every single character to be insufferable and selfish and frustrating, and all their problems I didn't have any empathy for. They were very manipulative people. They were very unsympathetic. I just didn't enjoy watching it at all. I was very bored, and it was not for me. I didn't care for it. So I have it at number 24. Number 23, I have the Animation Spotlight. The Animation Spotlight, I think I go at this point more out of obligation as an animation blogger than I do out of enjoying it. It's almost always not great. And there was one in particular this year that I really disliked. It was called Acid Rain. It was so long, and it was so like in your face, very like, it's about this like girl who becomes this hard rocker into drugs, and just her various like exploits. And it was just nauseating, and I didn't like the visuals. It was very repetitive, and it kept doing the same thing over and over again, and I really disliked it. So it was not for me. But yeah, and it was, like I said, it felt so long. And so yeah, and there was one, I think it was called Ono, that was sweet in the Animation Spotlight. It was called Untravel and Oh Bone were my favorites of the festival. Of the Spotlight. You feel like there's a lot of people that are trying to be Don Hertzfeldt in this group, and most of them can't pull it off, and they just feel really like trying too hard to be adult, trying too hard to be grown up, as opposed to kids animation. And I just really am not. It's not for me. Almost always, they're not for me. So number 22, I have a big favorite of the festival, but wasn't for me, is We Are Little Zombies. This movie is super original. It won the original award, and I see why, because it was very original, but I really disliked it. This is an art piece kind of movie, and it's about these kids that are orphans that form this band, and it's not about zombies at all. And I can see why people like this and why they were really inspired by it, because it is very creative and very original, but I just found it nauseating. Like, it uses, it's just very like in your face with the graphics. Like, all of a sudden there'll be like strobe lights and weird, I don't know, weird imagery, and there'll be all these weird sort of perspectives in the, like, all of a sudden you'll see the perspective of the kids drinking orange juice, and all of a sudden you are the orange juice, and the camera is. So there were a lot of like, it was just super long for what it is, I thought. And if this was just a short, I think it would have been much more palatable. But I don't know. I really honestly started to feel nauseous with the images. There's a point where you become uh, they're in a bus, and then the bus becomes in the womb, and you actually get like birth. It was, this movie is very weird and it's very artistic. Like I said, I get why people like it, but it was just not my kind of artistry, so I didn't care for it. We have the movie Halston. This is a documentary based on about the life of Royal Halston, who was a famous American fashion designer. And this is really frustrating because it had a lot of good stuff in it. It had a lot of really good interviews, had a lot of really interesting points about fashion and how he really changed fashion. But for some reason, they overthought it, and the director decided to like frame it as a mystery, which was so weird because there was really nothing that mysterious about it. Like, it was just a success story, and success stories happen. And I kept it, like, literally, there's this weird narrator who's like doing all this investigating. He's like, oh, the strange times of Royal Halston, and I kept expecting somebody to get murdered or something. It was like, because it was framed in this weird narration. I didn't think that worked at all, and it was very distracting from the overall narrative, and so that's why it ended up at number 20 in my ranking. Okay, number 19, I have Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. And this was a big story at the festival, and I think it'll probably be pretty divisive as a film. And I like some things about it. It's well made. I think all the acting is good. You know, this is about Ted Bundy, but I don't know. I did not think that they nailed the tone right. I understand what they were trying to do to show sort of how this guy could be sort of slick and kind of trick you into believing that he was innocent, and so that's what they were trying to do. But I don't know, I didn't like the fact that they showed no devious behavior at all, like nothing. There was no little like signs that he was a bad guy, and all the way through, like by the time it's really a courtroom drama. It's not a scary movie really at all. And by the time you get to sort of, I don't know, about 2/3 through the movie, I was thinking, like, are they trying to frame this as an underdog movie? Like, are we supposed to be rooting for Ted Bundy? Which I thought was really weird, and I didn't like that. And other people will appreciate that perspective. It just wasn't for me. But I think that Zac Efron is good, and I think that Lily Collins is good. John Malkovich has a lot of like fun with the role, but I don't know. It was just, Jim Parsons has a small role. So some people like this movie, but for me, I just thought it needed to be messier, and it would have been scarier. It would have been more interesting, I think, more layered than this weird sort of puff piece in favor of Ted Bundy. What? I don't know. I wasn't, yeah. So number 18, I have The Last Black Man in San Francisco. And this is a movie that I know a lot of people will really like, and a lot of people will really respond to. It's kind of similar to Sorry to Bother You, which I didn't like. I just found it too chaotic and without any kind of real compelling narrative. It was just, it was like they were just having this huge pile on where they're talking about every message and every idea. And I kind of felt a little bit similar about that with this. It's ostensibly about this man who was trying to save his family's home from getting sold, even though they're not actually living there, but he's trying to get some kind of ownership of the home because it's his family home. But anyway, and he ends up kind of squatting in the home for a while. But it was just too long for what it was trying to do. It was 2 hours long, and I just started to get bored with all of the randomness and the shouting and the nonlinear storytelling. And I don't know, it had some funny moments, it had some sweet moments, but overall I just found it kind of frustrating. And it's like, I just want a story, and you can have those creative elements, but like feed them into at least a little bit of a narrative, and I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I can understand why it will work for other people. But anyway, that's where I have The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Just not my style of art film. Then I have number 17, I have Photograph. Photograph was really frustrating because it had so many good elements. It's basically about this guy that takes pictures for tourists, and he meets this kind of richer girl who is training to become an accountant. He takes her picture, and then he basically tells his grandma that she is his girlfriend, and they actually kind of meet. She agrees to play along and pretend to be his girlfriend. And so that's like a super conventional plot. And it's a super, how many times have you seen that in a romantic comedy? And I feel like I wanted a more conventional ending if you're going to have such a conventional plot. And I just didn't think they stuck the landing. I didn't think the payoff was there. There's particularly an element where he's trying to find this cola for her that she just especially loves, and you didn't get to see her have the cola. He didn't even give it to her. She just saw no expression on her face, no idea of what this meant. And I don't know, I just felt like it just sort of like ended, and it wasn't even like a interesting ambiguous ending. It was just like, we're out of time to tell the story. It almost felt like a pilot to a TV show to me, as opposed to a movie. So I left very frustrated because I wanted to see them, get together in the end and have a kiss and whatever. But even then, even if it had just been him giving her the cola, I would have been way happier. But in the end, I ended up kind of frustrated. It is very slow too, so it's definitely not for everybody. So yeah, that's where I have Photograph. Okay, this one's kind of shocking because most people will have this much higher. Well, a lot of people really love this movie. I have Britney Runs a Marathon. And I really was expecting to super connect with this movie because I am also a plus size athlete. And so I thought I would really love this, about this girl who's overweight, who decides to run a marathon and gets super into her training and everything. But my problem with this movie is that Britney is a super unlikable character, and I didn't enjoy her for most of the movie. She's very rude. She's very mean to everybody around her. I don't know why anyone would want to be her friend. And she treats people terribly. And there's a scene where she is at a birthday party and she treats another overweight woman like horribly. And I can't, like, it's fine to have an unlikable character in a movie, I guess, but it has to feel sort of authentic. And I can't imagine anybody treating anybody like she does at that party. I just feel like nobody is that non-self-aware. It was super cruel and super mean. And yes, she does kind of come around a little bit, and she does have an arc, and that's good. But I don't know. I just found her a very difficult character to root for. And so I didn't really enjoy the movie very much. And it was kind of like, I felt she was really rude to her boyfriend character, I thought, treated him terribly. And so I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of Britney Runs Marathon. Okay, at number 16, I have Abe. This was one of the Sundance Kids entry, but it probably shouldn't have been a Sundance Kid entry because it has the F word 6 times. And it's so the language is pretty saucy. Definitely would be R-rated. In this movie, I had mixed feelings about. I really liked Noah Schnapp as Abe. He's a half Muslim, half Jewish child, and he's constantly battling both sides of his culture. His grandparents on both sides are very opinionated, trying to get him to kind of take their side of things. And there's some really nice moments between him and a chef who is a fusion chef. And so he tries to make this fusion meal for his family between both cultures, and it goes terribly. And my problem with this movie is that I thought that all of the adults were just the worst. His parents were sometimes supportive, but they were sometimes really frustrating. But then the grandparents were just like when it was just them, they would be really nice, but then when they were put together, and like it felt again kind of inauthentic to me. Like I can't imagine anybody who had a loving relationship with a child, and the child had made this huge Thanksgiving feast for you, and that you would that you wouldn't just suck it up for the child that you love in your life and eat the food that your grandchild had made and that he was obviously really proud of. And like they're just the worst at that thing, at that conversation, at that dinner, and to the point where one of the grandmas says, that they warned the parents they should never have had a child, never been born. And I just can't imagine anybody saying that if you have a loving relationship with your grandchild like that. I don't know, it just didn't feel authentic to me, and it was very unpleasant. But I did like Abe as a character quite a bit, and I did like the cooking in the movie, and so it had some good things, but it was a mixed bag for me. Number 15, I have Velvet Buzzsaw. This I actually ended up watching at home because it debuted on Netflix the same week of the festival, which is kind of lame. I feel like a bunch of the movies this year already were made by Netflix, made by these studios, and are going to get pretty big rollouts, pretty big releases that were purchased big. This is the only one that was literally released the same week of the festival, which is kind of frustrating because the whole idea of the Sundance Film Festival was to support independent film, and it's pretty hard to buy this as an independent film when it's getting a major rollout by Netflix with huge stars in it. And so I don't know, it's kind of a bummer. But anyway, I ended up seeing it, and I thought that it was okay. I thought that it had some kind of fun horror set pieces where these paintings coming alive and killing people was actually pretty clever. And I thought that there was enough that was funny between these sort of pedantic art appraisers and critics and whatever, and the cast was good enough. It's not great. The dialogue isn't great, and it's a little bit boring at times, and it definitely gets repetitive, and it's not as funny or as clever as it thinks it is. So it's a mixed bag, but I thought the good was outweighed the bad for me with Velvet Buzzsaw. Then I saw Moonlight Sonata, Deafness in Three Movements. This is a documentary about a family. It was done by Irene Taylor Brodsky, and she's the director, and she's talking about her parents who are deaf, and then her son who is deaf. And they all got the cochlear implants, and how they didn't really take to him that much, her parents, which is surprising. You think that would be a huge blessing for them, but it didn't end up turning out that way, which is interesting, I thought. And it had some really sweet moments for sure and it was interesting because her son would choose to turn off his implants because he felt at peace in the deaf world sometimes, and but so it was kind of interesting to have that option of sort of turning it off but then being able to turn it on again. I never really thought about that before, so that was all good. It was just a little dry for me at times. It was a little I don't know, I just got a little bored. There was maybe a little bit of a repetition with the same kind of scene done with him playing the Moonlight Sonata again and again and again. But it was definitely sweet, and I'd recommend it if you get a chance to see it. Then I saw Paddleton. This is another one. This is a Netflix movie, so you'll be able to see it on Netflix soon. It stars Mark Duplass and Ray Romano, and they play. Ray Romano lives in an apartment above the Mark Duplass character. They're just platonic friends. They're not lovers or anything. They're not in a relationship. But they are good friends. They get together to eat pizza and to watch their favorite kung fu movie. And they have the sport that they invented called Paddleton. And it turns out that Mark Duplass's character gets cancer. And so he decides that it's terminal. There's no hope for any kind of cure. And so he decides that he's going to end his life And so he wants his friend to be there, and his friend has very mixed thoughts about it, very frustrated about it, but he decides in the end to be there for his friend. And it was actually like very touching, but it sounds like a super downer, but it actually had quite a bit of humor in there. Evidently a ton of this is improvised, and they did a very good job if that's the case. Yeah, it's a sweet little movie I think a lot of people like. Then I saw Troop Zero. This is number 12 on my list. This is a quirky indie comedy in the vein of sort of Napoleon Dynamite kind of type of Sundance indie film. This is going to be on Amazon, and it has a great cast: Viola Davis, Allison Janney, Jim Gaffigan. You have the little girl from Gifted, and she's great as this girl named Christmas. And all the kids are so cute in this movie. And the whole idea is that they took this record with recordings up into space. And so they went around the country recording different groups. And in order to be considered to be on the record, you had to be a member of basically this Girl Scouts kind of a thing. And so this Christmas girl forms this troop with her friends, and they get Viola Davis to be their troop leader, and Allison Janney has the more uppity popular troop, and so that's kind of the antagonist. And it's a cute enough movie that they want to get they have to get a badge, each of the girls, in order to make it to the jamboree, in order to be on the record. And it has really cute moments. All the kids are very cute, and the adults seem to be having a pretty fun time. It's just it definitely feels like sort of Wes Anderson inspired. And so, that's fun enough. It's not as good as anything Wes Anderson would do, but it has that feel, I think. And the problem, I don't know, the weird parts about the movie is you definitely have to take a suspension of disbelief, because there is there's no racism in this small Hodunk town in 1968 or whenever this is supposed to have taken place, which is weird. Nobody seems to care that Viola Davis is Black, leading this group of girls, and nobody seems to care about the integration or the Black kids. That's not an issue at all. It's never brought up, which is fine, I guess. But I don't know if people are wanting something realistic at all. It's not realistic. And then also, it's just very, very, very quirky, and very, some people will be annoyed by it. Some people won't like it, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was sweet enough. So that's why I have it at 12. So number 11, I have Love Antosha, this documentary about Anton Yelchin and his life, and he died at 27 in this freak accident, but I didn't realize that he had cystic fibrosis, so it was really interesting to learn about that. And he did so much in his life. He made 69 film/TV projects in just that short amount of time that he was alive. It really is a profile of his parents, and it's so sad because he's their only child, and just you really felt for them. And but he really did make an impact in just a short period of time. There's a lot of he was into sort of really X-rated photography, so bear in mind it is definitely not for kids. This documentary, it's definitely a pretty hard R with some of this photography that they have. So just so you know. Then at number 10, I have Words from a Bear. And this is a documentary that is going to be aired on American Masters, PBS. And it is about the Pulitzer Prize winning Native American author, Scott Momaday. And he was a really interesting guy, really interesting character. And he has such a great voice. He could be a voice actor if he wanted, a really commanding voice. And so he was just interesting person to learn about, and I enjoyed watching it. I think that James Earl Jones should play Scott Momaday in a movie, because they really reminded me of each other. So it's this pretty standard documentary, but I really enjoyed it. So then we have number 9. We have The Farewell. This is a Chinese movie starring Awkwafina in the lead. Basically, her grandmother is given 3 months to live, And so they concoct this. I guess in Chinese culture, you don't tell people when there's that. You just let them keep living their lives, which is interesting. And they decide to all go and see the grandma under the guise of her cousin's wedding, which gets moved up very, very fast. And it's just a movie about family, and it has quite a bit of humor. It's very sweet, and the relationship between Aquafina's character and her Nana, definitely I could relate to, because I'm very close with my grandma, and I thought it was a really sweet little movie. Some of the pacing is a little off, but I really enjoyed it, especially the ending shot. If you don't tear up with that, then I don't know. Number 8, I have Sweetheart, and this is actually a little sort of indie horror creature movie that is done by J.D. Dillard. He was there at the screening, and that was a lot of fun. And it's about this girl who gets shipwrecked onto this island, deserted island, but it turns out there's this weird creature that's out to get her. And it's mostly just this girl, Kiersey Clemens, and you're following her as she tries to fight this creature. And it was really entertaining. It had some definite cheesy moments, but I think that all kind of made it more fun. It's not that long, which I think helped it as well. There are 2 characters that come in towards the last third that the acting wasn't great with them, and they weren't my favorite. I would have rather just been her the whole time, but still, it's a good little fun horror movie I think people will like. Number 7, I have The Witch Hunters. This is a Serbian film. It was also in Sundance Kids, and it's about this little boy who becomes friends with this little girl, and he has cerebral palsy, so he really struggles. And there's a really moving scene where he tries to walk up this set of stairs, and he can't do it. He's just so frustrated with his body. And then she has the little girl. Her father is leaving her mother for this other woman, and they've decided that she's a witch because she makes her own kombucha, and she's like brewing things and stuff, and it's pretty funny. And so they decide that they're going to become these superheroes, and they're gonna save her family and fix everything. And it's really cute, and I like the fact that all the adults were like nice people, and we're trying to be, as opposed to something like Abe, we're trying to be good people. Even the other woman was pretty nice, and it was a sweet, lovely little movie with pretty decent visuals, special effects, and stuff for the budget. And I just enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. So number 6, I have The Mustang. This is a movie about it stars Matthias Schoenaerts, and he is this prisoner at this jail that has this inmate equestrian program where they help train these wild Mustang horses. And he develops this relationship with this one particular horse. Like, it starts out really bad. Like, he's actually like fist fighting the horse, but he, like, in this character that he plays, is like a very rage-filled character. But as he gets to know this horse that's also pretty like strong-willed, he starts to kind of learn. And I don't know, it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. And it was emotional. It was really, really well done, I thought. And his change felt earned, and it wasn't too melodramatic. He wasn't a perfect person by any means, but he just grew, and I think something actually loved him for the first time in his life. And you get to see his daughter, and you get to find out why he ended up going to prison. And it was just, I thought, very well done character study for The Mustang. So we got a comment. Looking deeper into movie says, it does not feel like it's been a year since you covered the Sundance Film Festival 2018. Last year felt like shortest year of my life. Yeah, 2018, it's sped by, that's for sure. Okay, so now we're in my top 5 of the festival. Number 5, I have The Elephant Queen. This is an amazing nature documentary. They spent 4 years in the jungle, in the savannas, whatever you call it, of Africa, following this particular troop of elephants. But it doesn't just follow the elephants. It follows all these other creatures. Like, my favorite was these there's these Egyptian geese, I think they called them. And there's this one that's always kind of hanging behind of the other geese. And this little geese, and they called him Steven, which I don't know, for some reason, that just made me laugh, like little Steven while behind. And they follow these dung beetles and a whole bunch of other creatures. And it was just amazing. Amazing shots, amazing visuals, really cute. They kind of add sort of names and stories and stuff like that. So, if you like nature documentaries, I think you'll really enjoy The Elephant Queen. It was really good. Okay, number 4, I have Late Night. This was a big popular pick. I got a big buyout. This is directed by Mindy Kaling, and it stars Emma Thompson as this woman who is a talk show host. It made me wish that she was a late night talk show host in reality, because it would be so much better, because the ones we have, I don't think are very funny right now, are very good. And she's kind of having this sort of existential crisis, because she just wants like her show to matter more, I think, but like the ratings aren't doing very good because it's really boring. And so she gets them to hire because it's all male writing staff. And so she gets them to hire a female writer. Well, that's where Mindy Kaling's character comes in, and she starts out as just this sort of diversity hire, and then she ends up becoming more than that. And she's really sweet in it and really funny. It really reminded me of something Nora Ephron would have written in her heyday. Like, it had a little bit of social commentary, had a little bit, of sort of the Me Too movement, and her being this diversity hire and some of the other stuff that goes in. There's a little bit of romance, but not too much. I thought it was sweet. I thought it was funny. I thought it was well acted. I just really enjoyed it. And I have it at number 4. Number 3, I have The Report. This movie is a very stressful watch. It's a true story about Dan Jones, who is assigned to work on the House Intelligence Committee report on enhanced interrogation techniques. And he studies it for 10 years. And what I really admired about this movie is that it does not use kid gloves for anybody. They are very critical of the Obama administration, of the Bush administration, of so many different people that compromised and turned a deaf ear because of whatever reason that they had. And there was moments where it kind of reminded me of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That Dan Jones is the only one who's standing up and saying, I will not compromise. I will do the right thing. I will not. And it was pretty moving. But like I said, it was very intense. And you do see a lot of the torture that might be hard for people. But I thought it was really good and very riveting. Very good movie. So that's my number 3. My number 2 is called Maiden. This is a kind of documentary that I love. I love documentaries about sort of underdog sports and people rallying together for community or whatever. And Maiden is about there's this sailing race across the world. And in 1978, this boat called the Maiden was entered the race, that it was all female boat because nobody would hire a woman on their boat. And what they did a really good job, mixing archival footage with new footage and new interviews. And they got everybody. They even got some of the sort of chauvinistic reporters to come back and talk about things they said. And I don't know, they were really good. And I really liked how they were sort of accidental feminists. These were not like feminist archetypes. They were really enjoyable. And I really, I don't know, I just loved it. It was very well paced. It wasn't boring. It was very exciting. And you were just with them the whole way. And there can't be anything I'm less interested than yachting. But I was very engaged in this movie, and I really, really liked it. So Maiden is a huge win. I definitely recommend checking it out. Finally, my number 1 movie at Sundance 2019 is Blinded by the Light. This is was billed as a spiritual successor or whatever, or this was billed as the next Sing Street, and I love Sing Street, and I've heard so many things that got billed as the next Sing Street, and they almost never succeed. And this actually, I think, kind of is. The only major difference between this and Sing Street is that Sing Street has original songs, which gives it the edge, of course. But this was so sweet. It's directed by Gurinder Chadha, who did Bend It Like Beckham and the Viceroy House last year. And it's such a fun movie. It's about this Pakistani kid, 1987, in a town in England, and he gets introduced to Bruce Springsteen by one of his friends, who's a Sikh. And he's kind of bullied at school and stuff. And because of being Pakistani, there's a lot of anti-Pakistani feeling in the town. But he gets so inspired by Bruce Springsteen and his music. And it kind of gives him the confidence to become a writer, and that's what he wants to do. And the way they used the music was so effective, and I really liked all the supporting performances. His teacher, played by Haley Atwell, was great. I really liked his girlfriend; she was great. I really liked his family, and his neighbor next door was really fun, and they had a nice relationship. The big conflict in the movie is his dad, who wants him to behave more in his station, and feels like writing is not something that will be a good choice for him, and is just very not supportive of his choices. And so they have a lot of conflict between him and his dad. But I don't know, it was just so delightful. I loved it. I loved the music, and I'm not even that big of a Springsteen fan, but it was great, and it was joyful, and I think everybody will love it. And so yeah, I just love this movie. It was so good. And so definitely you want to keep an eye out for Blinded by the Light. It was amazing. So there you go. That's my thoughts on all 25 films that I saw at Sundance. I had, just to review, I have Blinded by the Light at 1, Maiden at 2, The Report at 3, Late Night at 4, The Elephant Queen at 5, The Mustang at 6, The Witch Hunters at 7, Sweetheart at 8, I have The Farewell at 9, Words from a Bear at 10, Love and Tosha at 11, Troop Zero at 12, Paddleton at 13, Moonlight Sonata, Deafness in 3 Movements at 14, Velvet Buzzsaw at 15, Abe at 16, Brittany Runs a Marathon at 17, Photograph at 18, Have You Seen The Last Black Man in San Francisco at 19, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile at number 20. I have Halston at 21. The Little Zombies I have at 22, and the Animation Spotlight at 23. I have After the Wedding at 24, and I have The Sunlit Night at 25. So there you go. That is my ranking of the films I saw at Sundance 2019. So let me know what you think. Do any of these sound interesting to you? Put in the comment section. I would really be curious to know. And thanks so much. And yeah, I have all of my reviews, longer reviews of each of the films on my blog. So make sure you check that out. And yeah, so I'll get back on track next week with my normal posts. And that should be fun. Look forward to that. And thanks so much. I will talk to you all later. Bye.